the people. So, welcome everyone to this session. We are covering this as a panel discussion on the topic transformation in contract management. We have our esteemed panelists. I'll start with the introductions one by one. Firstly, we have Atul Juvle, who is the General Counsel, Compliance Officer, and Company Secretary for Schindler India Private Limited. He looks at regions across India as well as South Asia. So Atul Jable is ranked in top 100 GCs in 2020 list published by Business World Legal in Feb 21 and enlisted by Forbes India in top GC list published in March 2021. He carries 35 plus years experience, which includes working with a premier public sector bank, that's Bank of India, NBFC, and a merchant bank, the Tata Group, as well as the export house at Tata International Limited, US MNC manufacturing and services companies, SDFC Life Insurance, Godrej Agrovet Limited, and currently, like I said, he's employed with Schindler India Private Limited. Next, let me introduce Madhu Khatri. She is the independent board member for Hexaware Technologies and Saskin Technologies. She's also partner with Social Venture Partners, a seasoned C-suite executive with over 30 years of global experience working with multinational companies as a trusted advisor to corporate leaders, boards, CEOs, and chairpersons on risk mitigation and compliance, reputation management, business strategy, mergers and acquisitions. In the course of these 30 years, Madhu has been the general counsel of Wipro, head of legal department of Microsoft India, GE Healthcare South Asia, and extensive litigation experience in tax courts and the Supreme Court of India. Most recently, Madhu was the chief evangelist of a Seattle based legal tech startup to evangelize technology adoption with key stakeholders and customers and worked with the product team on product innovation. A passionate believer in leveraging the global trends of digital transformation, she has led many technology policy decisions with the government and thought leaders. She's passionate about leveraging her experience as a board member for companies. So that's Madhu for you guys.
Thank
Next
you.
we have next we have Ganesh Parameswaran is the general counsel of the BIC group for Middle East, Africa, India, and Asia Pacific regions, leading the legal, secretarial, regulatory, advisory, and government affairs responsibilities. He is a board member of BIC subsidiaries in the region and also a member of the governing board of the BIC Corporate Foundation. Ganesh has over 20 years of in-house counsel experience in consumer goods industry, having worked at Hindustan Unilever and Marico before joining BIC. He has extensive experience in emerging markets and the consumer goods industry with an expertise in intellectual property matters, disputes and litigation, M&A, compliance, and policy advocacy. He's a qualified company secretary and holds a bachelor's degree in law. We also have K. Satish Kumar. K. Satish Kumar is the Senior Vice President and Group Chief Legal Officer at Intellect Design Arena Limited. Satish is an award-winning seasoned legal professional with over 25 years of legal experience. Is currently the SVP and Group Legal Officer, as I told you, at Intellect. And he's also a keynote speaker in various international platforms and an author. He has received many awards, few being the coveted Legal Counsel of the Year in 2018 by INBA, and is also featured in GC Power List India in 2018 by Legal 500. He is actively involved in many pro bono activities through Chennai Lawyers. He has been awarded as the Social Activist of the Year in 2016 by Deccan Chronicle. His long legal strides include working in prestigious MNCs like Ramco, HCL Technologies, Polaris, and Camoil. Lastly, we have Dinesh, who's the moderator for the session. He's the founder and CEO for Volody. Dinesh is a successful entrepreneur and a leading corporate professional who is known for in-depth knowledge, devotion, and enthusiasm for his business. He kick-started his professional career with world's largest bank, Deutsche Bank, working for more than a decade in credit and finance function. Later, Dinesh moved to the largest payment service company, Fidelity Information Services. As the head of finance, he managed business finance and legal and compliance functions. Eventually, he evolved in the industry and gained immense experience at CFO level while serving various large global corporations as a global CFO for CRISIL and Tech Process Solutions Limited. Dinesh later founded Volody in 2015 and has been working relentlessly to grow the company and cater to the needs of its clientele. So over to you, Dinesh. Let's begin with the session.
Thank you so much, Sanket, for the nice introduction, and thank you everyone for to be part of this panel. I think such an esteemed panel. We are lucky to have you all here. I mean, we're covering industries like consumer technology, design thinking, vertical transportation. So I think it's a very interesting panel, and the whole audience will benefit a lot from all of you here. So, I mean, let me set the context here. If you look at the whole contract, which is the core of this discussion, we will talk about the whole transformation, the digitalization piece later on. But the whole contract, what is it all about? It's all about having a legal document in place, which is based on a commercial arrangement, and then you have a process of drafting the whole contract and, doing the negotiation with other parties and, and then talk about you taking approval, signature, stamping, and managing the expiries, maturities, etc., etc. So that is the core of the contract. And if I look at situation like, or maybe things like 20, 30 years back, barring MNCs, the contracts were not really signed and were not really there for most of the transaction. It was either on verbal comfort or based on some invoice, PO, etc. But the contracts were signed only for the last transaction or for global transaction. But things have changed, the compliances have increased, governance is becoming far more critical going. So hence the whole process of having a legal contract signed is become very, very important. Now, starting with the thought process of having a physical document signed and kept in the fireproof, then going to a situation where it was kept with some storage company somewhere in if you look at Mumbai, it was somewhere in Panvel, etc. If you look at Bangalore, it must be somewhere in exterior area, and then whenever you need the contract, you get it. And with now, you want contract just by flick of button, and you want to see that what is there in that. And so life has changed in last 20 years, and if I talk about the whole digitalization in contract management, it's been about 15 years, and Madhu and Atul, you will possibly give your opinion how long it is. But in my view, 15 years, which is the time from when the whole digitalization process has happened, and it has also gone through a journey in terms of starting with the document management software, then coming up with a contract management software, just taking care of workflow. And now things have really evolved where, we are talking about artificial intelligence, integration with the ERP, CRM, etc. So, things have gone beyond, and with COVID coming in, I think a lot of GCs has made peace with the thought process that contract has to be signed physically. I think that thing has become past, and in 16 months, we all are sitting at home. I mean, how are you signing contract? Business is still going on. We're not saying that we'll stop the business. So definitely contract is getting signed. It is not getting signed in physical form. So I'm sure, we've all made peace with, how can we have a stamp paper in digital form, or how can we sign digitally? All that has, become a thing of past. And now it's like people are thinking about how we can make this process far more smart, far more critical or far more, engaged with the whole business. So, I want to start with Madhu, because you come with experience working with the GC for 3 decades, more than 3 decades, and then working for, for a short while you worked with, one of the contract management company as evangelist, and then now wearing the hat of a, board member, which is pushing on the board member about pushing the company about the governance piece, the compliance piece, etc. So, I mean, how are you finding the whole transformation, and what is your expectation from this product, and also how are you pushing your company wherever you are on board, or when you're talking, you must be advisor to many people. People must be calling you for various advices. So you must be giving those bites of what they should follow, what they should not follow. So I think our audience would be very much delighted to have your point of view, Madhu. What do you think the transformation and transition from where we were 30 years back, where we were 20 years back, and how things are shaping up in time to come, and what they should follow to get to the right solution for them?
Yeah. First, thank you so much. Indeed, it is a privilege and a pleasure to be part of this group, which is discussing something that I think is presumably close to everybody's heart, not just from the panelists, but also from the audience, I hope. And I think that if I had to put it into words, that close to our heart is the idea that technology is transforming the world, and rapidly so. And I think the difference between those companies that will go into the next wave of development and progress and those which will get left behind will be how rapidly technology enables their businesses. And we see that in brick and mortar companies. We see that in new models of revenue generation from hotels to taxi cabs to delivery of food to e-commerce to just buying goods to fashion. Everywhere, technology is taking a lead in being able to transform the business models itself. And so it's in that context when we think about the fact that almost every business, at the core of a business, is commerce, the contract. That is the heart and soul. And it was sort of ironical that the heart and soul, which is the contract, is probably not as well recognized as an opportunity for mining that data, for pulling out information, for more efficiencies than it should be. There's a lot of people who are doing it, but the gap between those who are adopting technology and those who are not is still wide, which is why in some ways, Dinesh, opportunities for companies like Volodi are huge, because it's still early days for adoption. And yet it's not early days because there are people who run the risk of missing the bus. What do I mean by missing the bus here? As a lawyer, you're not going to not be a lawyer. But I think the missing the bus is, what is the role we play in our own legal departments of leaving a legacy of technology? What is the process that you want to leave behind that is automated, that is digitized, that is free of human intervention, of people moving, dependent on resources? And the first word that comes is, everywhere in our departments, we need to look at how can we bring technology to play in our decision-making process. And obviously, one element of that legal function is ensuring that the company has its contracts in place. There's renewals, there's obligation managements, there's risk assessments, there's standardization of clauses, there's a playbook being created, there's all the volume of contract to be managed. There are hundreds of contracts which lawyers will not get involved with. Legal departments will never have the bandwidth to do all of that. How do you ensure that you still manage that risk by providing a framework where the algorithm steps up for you? It's not going to take your job. It just steps up for you to be able to say, I have peace of mind because I've set up some rules and framework through which a lot of the contracts will get automated with parameters around what can be approved, what can't be approved, automatic automation. So I have seen, I think, from my days when we first started to put contracts, just scanning them, to then saying, okay, let's go SharePoint. And then from the SharePoint moment onwards to start saying, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to build our own little system, to now saying, you've got third-party providers. and you want to be on the cloud. You want to be able to access in real time all your contracts from everywhere, from across locations. And then I have gone from there to being actually able to use some of that digitized information. So storage for contract is fantastic as an idea. But it's only a movement of storage from saying limited, shelves and lockers and all those from the physical to the digital. That's the obvious thing that there is safety in doing some of that. But I think I've also experienced the ability to pull out in real time key clauses in contracts to establish for your vendor or to establish for an insurance company that is looking to insure you on your risks, how we manage our risks, to be able to in real time actually use it in litigations where, for example, sometimes there's been chaos about a 20-year-old contract and somebody's got version 2016, but we are looking at a litigation which is on a contract which is 2018, and everybody's like, no, we really signed the same version, everything's the same, let's use the 2016. But guess what, you did make amendments, and those could either work to your advantage or to your disadvantage. And I have personally been able to successfully get massive claims, not because of only the reason that we had a great case, but we found the right contract at the right time.
Yeah.
And the other side, the distributor was looking at the wrong contract, just simply because our contract for that was just digitized. So the power of digitization becomes immense once you start to recognize the power of technology first. And I think that perhaps at this point, I will say no more and leave others to jump in as well, is really where I think legal departments play a big role. We need to be able to demonstrate how we use this technology. And then whether it's in the boardroom, boards are asking all kinds of questions on certain types of things and clauses we've entered into, and how we might even be managing it through the blockchain to ensure some compliances. There's a lot of case studies. I mean, there's just stories and stories of things you have avoided, things you have gained advantage, just simply because of the sheer access of the information. And like you said, Dinesh, the AI piece is going to enhance, it's a long journey yet on that, but early movement, early data does show that there's a lot of workflows that you can set up with AI. But the key to that is the more you use it, the more useful AI is going to be. It's not going to be useful for, a tiny piece of the contracts if we use them.
I think you made a very right point, Madhu. Before I, jump to other panel member, I just make one small point that whenever there was a legal notice coming from a vendor or a customer, we were always running for where is the signed contract. That has been the very standard discussion in every management discussion. Where is that signed contract? And that's where the whole thought about let's keep it in storage, let legal department keeps it, let business department keeps it. So all the discussion going on. And Atul is smiling. So, Atul must be having some stories around it. But before that, Atul, why don't you give your perspective about the whole transformation in last 20 years and how things are moving now?
So first of all, thank you very much, Dinesh and Sanket, for this opportunity. And with the esteemed panelists, really, it's a pleasure to be here and to share experiences. I will say, though you said 10 years when this started automation and all, and then maybe 5 years, we are looking at the journey, which is more relevant. But more relevant, we have to thank Corona for speeding up this. I'm telling you what are the special effects, and one of the best effects of Corona is to bring digitalization compulsory at your doorstep. And that has increased the need. Actually, need was there also earlier, but we were taking the shortcuts, then budgets, and then explaining to the companies. So that was there. We have to also thank Companies Act 2013, which put onus on the board of directors to have the system in the place, and where they are responsible for the system led for the governance. There's a specific section in the Companies Act 2013. So it started with Companies Act 2013 also, where you asked the question to Madhu that at the board level now they are asking that earlier, if I have to go back 2 decades, Then there was a compliance document, which is a khana purti or maybe column filling, which is gone now. And now Madhu is smiling because in MNCs, I also work in MNCs. So MNCs, that was not happening. And we were legally taken to task why you are signing yes and no. But at the same time, majority of us did, because I worked in the various companies. So majority companies were depending on that khana purti. So it's a good journey actually. Last 1 decade, I will say, not 2 decades. And last 16 months, really, I'm happy because everything is digitalized. So you don't have choice. Means and nobody's taking objection. Now take up signatures. How many signatures company secretary is doing? You means one will go mad. I also thank DMAT because otherwise it was really I'm a company secretary for 3 decades and it's really madness. When I remember that 3 decades back, how much signing I was doing. So it's a really good, and transformation is really wonderful. And not only that, but particularly the vendors like Volody, which is there in for 5 years and doing well. According to me, you have got really right time in, and now it's only particularly to grow up. Yes, AI will take some time because of the cost, though there are advantages. But at the same time, it's a good journey of transformation in contract. One more thing you asked why I was smiling, because General Counsel, we are used to take the shelter that we are not getting the contract, so we cannot fight the case. Case is weak. So that is gone with the digitalization, because once you have got once because sometimes when you cannot defend, you don't have documents, and it's not only company secretary, but the General Counsel were taking the advantages, but at the same time it was really pathetic. Those who are senior General Counsel, they know the how to get the documents. Means fighting is not an issue because General Counsel are made for the litigation fight. But if there is no documents, then it is very difficult to litigate also. So it's a really, I'm telling you, a great advantage of particularly contract management system, where you get everything without any trouble, without wastage of time. And so we have to only think of litigation. And there also, if wherever possible, we take AI into picture so that we get to know also how strong it is, how weak it is. So at this stage, I will stop and then we can continue.
Yeah, I think there's a question somebody has asked in the context of AI. It might be useful for anyone in the group who wants to address it, where there's I think somebody called Anand says, why is India far behind in AI? And I think it's not so much about India being behind, nor is it about AI's going to suddenly draft our contracts for us in lieu of legal advice. The way AI will work on helping will be based on all the work that you have stored together in your own databases of all your contracts. So that's how the enablement, the power of AI, and Dinesh and Sanjay can speak more to it, is about first getting a lot of the data, and then the richness of that data will give you the accuracy of the insights that data will give you, Anand. So, if you've got 20,000 contracts in there and 10,000 of those contracts are NDAs, and then you have got a contract management system, the minute you start to write the word confidential, or any other word that you want to define, it will throw up from your own usage of those contracts, the ones that are, used in the customers that you want to either pick from, or those that have been the oldest, or however you may have categorized. And that is how the drafting will be helped. It's not to say that AI, and I'm at pains to explain that, because I feel that sometimes people think that AI is going to step in for lawyers. It will not. It will not help you to draft something out. It will definitely help you to pull out intelligence from the data that you have. But the key to that is going to be a vast database that you feed into the machine learning system, so that then it can draw insights. If it sees patterns, that's the key of an AI thing. It will recognize your patterns. It will recognize the search words and pull together information at speeds faster than a human being would be able to do it, so that you, the human being, are still then able to utilize that information in an intelligent way.
Yeah, no, I think, yes, Atul, you're saying something.
I will add just 2 points. just direct 2 point, not more than 1 minute. Why India is behind in AI implementation? There are 2-3 reasons. Number one reason Madhuji gave, that is people are afraid of losing the job. So that misconception has to be taken out, and for that this kind of seminars are required. So thanks to Volodya.
That's correct.
Second one is that we have got a labor available. So passing the budget is also difficult. For example, initial cost of AI was very high, and when we have got people available at good amounts, particularly, why would you have particularly AI? Now everything is moving on the digital, so now it will become inevitable. That's it.
No, I think that's very right point. And Madhu and Atul, before I jump on to Ganesh and Satish on their point of view, but I want to add here, it is not about cost, or it is not about, I think it's all about the acceptance, which is what we are finding in the GC community, and this is going to come. And then I will not talk too much about our own company, what we are doing, but I just give you a broad sense of what is happening in the industry. I think the biggest thing which is happening now is even if you have hard copies of the contract, you don't need anybody to read those contracts and create a digital database. As long as someone can scan it, that's about it. The database will get created. That is power of AI. If you really want to know how many contracts I've got a force majeure clause, and if you want to extract those clauses, that is power of AI. You are signing a 1,000-page agreement and you are looking for a clause which is absolutely no for you, like jurisdiction which is somewhere in other country you are not interested in, or maybe the unlimited liability or any M&A clause, and it is 1,000-page contract. It is not possible for find those words. You want some solution to just take out those clauses or take out those words to give you an alert that you might have missed it, but here is the clause. Are you sure you want to sign on this? I mean, that is power of AI, and then we go beyond. And then there are businesses like ours where even at some point we are thinking about doing the negotiation using bots. That will be AI, but it doesn't mean that we'll be doing negotiation using bots, which is very complex negotiation or technical negotiation. It'll be like a small negotiation, which is like negotiating NDA. I mean, in today's world, GCs are spending time on negotiating NDA also. Does it really required? I mean, you can decide that these 10 clauses, I don't want my time. I don't want my legal department time. These are your parameters. Within that, you negotiate on your own and let bot do it. So things have, I think it's more about acceptance, and like Atul and just said, people thinking that they might be redundant. That is not the case. I think what we are trying to say is that you should spend your energy on smarter things. And lawyers are becoming part of tech companies now. So I think things are really changing. So I'll just jump on to Satish. Satish comes from an IT company background. So, I mean, for him, for more than 2 decades, he's been with IT company, and we are talking about technology. So who else than Satish who can give us view? I mean, he must be having a system maybe for last 10 years, wherever he was. And then I'm sure you might be providing similar solution to a few of your clients as well. So, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, Dinesh, thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah, the last 20 years has been a tremendous journey in the legacy of the system. I have seen it all. Believe me, I have seen where, literally I had to print the document, sign it, and keep it in files to where we are now. So this has been a tremendous journey over the last 20 years, I can say. And now, in fact, at Intellect, we are into, a digitized product, not just, more of a banking product, though we are not into, providing contract management solution. But we have a very skeletal base of, contract management solution in our system. And this has been very helpful to us, in a day-to-day basis as a GC. I would like to, open my laptop and see how much work is pending on a day. I need a dashboard every day in the morning to see what workload each of my in-house counsels has. That is very critical, because otherwise I may not be able to distribute the work. I may not be able to evaluate the performance. It could be possible that one counsel is overloaded, other counsel is not over, doesn't have much work. So I should have evenly, the load should be evenly between all the counsels. So I think AI is something which is certainly going to help me in this front. I have been adopting technology, being in a technology company. I have been adopting technology with open arms right for the last 2 decades. And I am sure that, AI is, as Madhu and Atul told, AI is a long journey ahead. Now, nobody can say that, we are complete into AI. We have adopted AI. I am looking forward to adopt AI. And, I have seen multiple scenarios, where we need an agreement. In Australia, we have only the master agreement. We don't have the change orders. We don't have the variation agreement. We don't have all the variation agreement. Is this the only variation agreement? All these questions come during a novation of an agreement. For example, I'm just want to bring out an example. So such things, everything is ironed out once we have an AI. All the documents can be found in one place. So this is a tremendous journny that we are in. And Dinesh, I should congratulate you and your team on having a wonderful platform. And I had seen this, and I'm sure that this is certainly going to be a very useful platform for many companies to come.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dinesh. So, let me change the topic, for Ganesh. Ganesh, you just mentioned just before the starting of the webinar that you shortlisted one vendor for digitization of your CLM process. And it must have been a big challenge for you globally as well, because I think the moment you go to the CFO or to the technology guys that, you need a software, they just assume that legal department don't need software. And that's for used to be 5 years back. I don't know what it is now. And then you start with the budget approval, then whole process of taking everybody on board, etc. So, and then of course you want to look at the vendor who should give you what you're looking for. I mean, there could be some 10, 15, 20 players for CLM product, but you are looking for someone who's good for you. So what is the experience because the audience here would like to know about how to go about it.
No, thanks for the question, Dinesh, and wonderful to be here with such an eminent panel and wonderful co-panelists. So the answer to your question, and I think Atul touched on it earlier, is that as it was maybe 18 months ago, where you had to make a business case for digitization, thanks to Corona, the business case makes itself, because you're working remotely, everyone is collaborating on digital platforms, and the business leaders recognize the power of digitization to enable collaboration, document availability, everyone collaborating on a digital platform seamlessly, ability to search for clauses like force majeure. In the first hard lockdown that we had for 45 days, most of what we were doing every day was to look at force majeure clauses in our commercial contract, saying where do we have opportunities to pause, or we were receiving force majeure claims from counterparties. If you don't have a digital platform and you're a global organization operating in 80, 100 countries around the world, how are you going to analyze contracts and take a position with the business? So I think the case for efficiency is made for itself, which is what our panel explained before. The second part to this is, what would you have your lawyers do? And maybe the cost of legal talent in India is not yet as expensive as it is in Europe or in the US or in a place like Dubai, where legal talent is extremely expensive. So if you have a lawyer, what would you rather have him do? Would you rather have him spend time looking at each bespoke contract, negotiating it, then printing, then physically signing, scanning. Each of these add several minutes or hours to your working day. And at the end of it, you have no certainty about whether the contract is correctly archived. All the variations are available. Is it in the standard form? Because typically there is non-standardization across the organization. Then you have the individual flair of the lawyer. Someone negotiates a certain term in their market, someone else negotiates something else. So there is a lack of uniformity and a global standard across the organization. So all that put together makes the case for itself in why you should have a global contract management tool. And CFOs themselves are investing a lot in automation, because you see the power of analytics. You see the need to have a real-time dashboard at the CXO level. You want to see how many contracts got negotiated, which region or which market is leading in terms of contributions, what are the types of contracts we negotiated, turnaround time for the legal function. So you get a myriad of analytics which can really help you craft the organization and the legal department strategy using the tool. So I think the business case in that sense was easy to build. And then you start to select the tools that you want to apply. And I think this really is a factor of where you want to start and how much of an envelope your organization has in terms of budget. Typically you want to start with the Ferrari, right? You want to go to the most expensive, the best looking, the most slick tool out there in the market. But my own theory around this is that you start the journey small and scale it up gradually. A tool like Volody is right up there with the global tools or the global vendors in terms of capabilities, probably better. And I can commend Volody to say that your product is better than the so-called global vendor products that are out there in the market. So you craft a tool that suits your budget and the key modules or capabilities you're looking at. Maybe to start with, AI is not your most pressing need. Your most pressing need is document automation, automating the workflow, archival, etc. So pick your priorities, select the tool, invite a number of vendors to the bidding process, so you have a good understanding of comparative capabilities, costs, etc. And then select one to get into the implementation process. And the implementation is a story in itself. And I can say from experience that selecting the tool is just the beginning. And I would rather, and from personal experience, say that pick the vendor that supports you fully on implementation, because I can tell you there are vendors out there who will make the sale and then say, I'll give your project manager 2 days of training and off you go implementing the tool, call us if you get into trouble. If you have a vendor like that, then I imagine that the implementation process is going to be a rocky, hard journey for the legal team. I think the biggest piece of the implementation exercise is to recognize that implementing the CLM tool is an organizational change process. So if you have the existing contracting process and just think that your miseries will go away by putting the tool on top of it and the problem will solve itself, it won't. It will require a recalibration of your existing workflows, the ways of working. So your client functions, their heads of department have to be taken into confidence, and some adjustments and negotiations have to be made with your colleague functions to agree on the optimal workflow through the tool. Otherwise, you will just implement a tool because somebody said it was a great idea, or your board or your senior management imposed on you, and you will not extract the maximum potential of that tool.
No, so rightly said, Ganesh. I think I can relate to each and every point you made about selecting the vendor and also your priorities. and in terms of someone who's helping you in the whole implementation. I think very, very well articulated and very relevant in today's discussion. So Madhu, let me ask you a question about blockchain. So, everyone is looking at blockchain as a game changer, and I personally believe in that. And I think as a company, we are also working on that direction. And I see that that's the next goal for any CLM company to enable blockchain, wherein the whole contracts will be written in a coding language. So, I just want to pick your brain and let the audience gain from your knowledge about it. So what do you think about it? I mean, will it stay? Will it go? Will it not sustain? How to be?
Yeah, so I would say that it's such early days that even I'm sort of learning or have learned a little bit only about the power of blockchain. But to go back to dial back one sentence before that to what Ganesh said about if your need is digitization, storage, first go take the small steps. And I think at that point, it's important to say that if you are taking steps to go the whole hog, which is you're going to move to a contract platform, which you should have moved to years ago, it is now too late to say, let me do a simple one. The ability, the scalability of your contract provider, solution provider, needs to be tested today versus your readiness for each one of those features, which means that, like Ganesh said, how long will you take to implement it for me? How are you my implementation partner? And if the guys are telling you I'll take 5 months to do something like that, that means they've created something fairly complex. What stages of it? So there are definitely those stages of your own readiness, but there's also the ability for us to make sure that the readiness of the platform is ahead of where we are today. And therefore, for us to adopt newer pieces of those features should be something that is the choice we make, and not having to then find newer platforms and newer solutions. Coming to the blockchain thing, as I understand blockchain, it's really a process of authentication, of verification. And so therefore, what you're trying to say is that all the contracts, let's assume for a minute that it is the contracting process that you want to use blockchain in. There are small use cases that are already coming up, which are often being driven by customers themselves. For example, I know of one where a particular company wants to enforce what are called standard FCPA clauses, foreign corrupt practice clauses, into all their vendors as part of the contract negotiation they do. Now, you can use blockchain to ensure that right down the chain, you are able to authenticate at one go that that clause exists with everybody. And that verification process works through blockchain as well. And you don't need to manually try to say that you're looking at every one of them, because your next chain of people who's going to, your suppliers will then have 5, 10, 15 other suppliers whom they are working with. And I'm talking in a large corporation. And using blockchain, I recall, seems to have worked at least in one customer where they were able to do an authentication of having all these supply chains being managed on specific clauses having been signed and authenticated that it's signed. That's just one use case. I think as we go along, we will learn more of these. For now, I don't know too many more of where blockchain is going. So if there are people here who've got that experience, it would be very interesting to know that as well.
So, I think one question we always hear from many of our customers about the e-stamping, wherein the stamp paper, in the PDF document attached to the document, and then document gets signed digitally. I can say maybe at least 100, 200 large corporates, very renowned corporate in India now, they are doing it. But there could be 200 just on the edge. They might do it, they may not want to do it, but I want to take your views, Atul, and maybe Satish, because you are, looking at India market as well. And I'm sure you must be having certain contracts which are requiring stamp paper enclosure as well. And then we've seen many corporates very big name. I can't name them because it's a public platform, but they're just doing it, and they say that it's all fine. It's a COVID time. You can't have physical stamp paper coming in and closing it and signing it in physical form. So Atul, what do you think about, how is it going in your mind?
Okay, actually, e-stamping is not difficult because you get the stamp paper now on the digital mode. So automatically you have paid the stamp duty in your company name, and that stamp paper is added to your first page as an agreement. So PDF copy digitally sign, I think takes care of it. It's not that difficult. Okay. Question is that do you want to pay stamp duty? That is the question. So paying stamp duty and getting the document agreement, making it perfectly legal, because somebody has asked question on the chat box also about legislations and all. If we want, we can comply, and it is not a difficult. It is not a rocket science at all. I can tell you that, because we have to just go to the site. We have to pay the fees, and you get the e-stamp paper. I mean to say, a soft copy of the stamp paper, which is in the company name. So it is a legal document. It's not done. Actually, it has taken out the one of the sometimes you get cheated when you buy stamp paper loose on the market. So you are sure that you are downloading from the government site, and it's the right stamp paper. So that also is taken care, where sometimes you get sometimes you are having the fake stamp paper and all. So digitalization is helping on that many small crimes which were happening. We are not realizing that, but the digitalization is the best, particularly helping us to take care of many small mistakes which we were doing, because it's very difficult to find out whether the stamp paper is fake or genuine.
That's great.
And I'm telling you, because of the time constraint of time, we end up buying with a local shop nearest our office. And you cannot make out, because it's a printed paper, so you cannot make out whether it is genuine or not. We know the stamp scam. So coming back to the e-stamping, is very easy, I can tell you that. And I'm telling you, people have realized, even companies have realized, that you can work from home. There is no harm actually. I'm not saying 100%, not illegal also, but yes, 60-70%, I don't see a problem in working perfectly on the digital platform. There is a digital signature advantage is there, so you can your document can be signed digitalized also. Even there are other ways of signing also on the digital platform. So I will put a start, because there is a time limitation. So let Satish also speak about it.
Yeah, my experience is in India, stamp papers, usually clients insist on having stamp paper, especially in case of government companies and some banks, PSU banks. They insist that it should be on stamp paper. And COVID time, I will say that though there are many disadvantages and we face a lot of challenges, but digitization is one of the biggest boon that we had during COVID time. And e-stamp paper is just a call away now. You just have to pick up the call and ask them to supply, or ask them to send it off to you. For us, it comes by email, or it can be downloaded. It's just a call away for us. So, and moreover, earlier I used to buy stamp paper, keep it in a drawer, and wait for we should be having 2008 paper, 2010 paper. Now everything, all those are gone now. You need it today, you call up, and the next 10 minutes you get the stamp paper. So it becomes very easier, and you save cost, you save you save money, you save many things. You as Atul said, you can save all fraudulent activities. I think this is the best way to going forward, and I can only concur that the e-stamp paper is not difficult for us at all. I will say that we have adopted. We have easily adopted. It was not so maybe a couple of years back. I will not say that e-stamp paper was so easy, but now it has become easier, or we have adapted it, and now it is very easy to get e-stamp papers. So I think it's a welcome move for all of us.
Right.
Dinesh?
So Madhu, from the thanks Satish. So Madhu, from your point of view, being a board member, I'm sure governance is very critical, and also, somewhere obligation management comes within that. So is that also your priority for you when you are speaking in the board wherever you are?
Yeah, so I think that as a board member too, I have seen this experience both from not being a board member and a general counsel in a meeting with the board, and now being on the other side, that the more you are able to demonstrate compliance is a process and that it will throw up issues through tool management, the more comfortable the boards will be with your style and the management's operation of compliances. So I think, at a broad level, this is important that we don't think that the board's going to ask and therefore say, oh, have you got a contract management platform? And then we will go out there and get it. That is not really how it's working, right? But what is very, very critical is when you're able to say, in our discussion with the board and with the audit committee, and as I would sit before the audit committee and run through some of my litigations, run through our discussions on how we were managing some of the compliances, the attention they gave to the dashboards that we have created that enable the board to get a bird's eye view of compliance issues is very, very reassuring to them. And so when you say you have a contract management platform or a system which is giving you renewals, which are giving you how you're fighting your litigations, which is giving you in real time capability to manage obligations or certain obligations that actually translate many times, what tends to happen is when you've got a lot of obligations and you've really got money behind them, so you've left money on the table as well.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have done a few things, you've done them, but nobody traced them because the business is so busy executing away. But those milestones, when you met them, you were entitled to certain additional payments. And when you go in and say, this is, or even to the CFO, this is how you're going to be able to manage finding out where those milestones are and how you get additional money back from your customers and clients, that is a very important thing for the board to understand, that you're bringing to the table compliance, risk mitigation, and a business perspective. And I think as general counsels, as lawyers, our contract is not only about contracting or, whether we manage to get the contract signed or, DocuSign or Adobe Sign, or it's also about what we do with that as an asset, how much of that data we are able to pull out. And I think in that, boards are very interested in listening to. In my own current role as a board, I am constantly asking that question as well.
Wow.
How are we managing this compliance? And in fact, I have triggered questions without saying, go get a contract management. I will not say that, because you may want to manage compliance the way you want to, but I want to know what you're doing to get this compliance. And quite often the question then has been, we are evaluating a CLM tool. We're looking at it for the next year. This is what we're doing. Or we were thinking we're going to build our own because we're a tech company. And I'm like, okay, please evaluate whether you want to really do that as well, because every version of it is going to then be managed by you. And at some point, the software becomes very, very clunky. And there are hundreds of examples of that as well, that you want to go to somebody who's creating the solution, if it's capable of being bought off the shelf versus trying to create it, even if you have the capability. And non-tech companies really don't even have the capability to sort of create those solutions. So even anyway, that is a restricted thing. So yeah, so I think to your question, both as general counsel and as a board member now, I have definitely had conversations on both sides where how I manage my compliance, my processes, and use technology is a very valuable piece of what I leave on the table about my department and about myself to the leadership. So to my own this thing, it is that important that, legal departments drive this behavior of using technology. Sometimes they're pulled in as team members and experts, and the business has already decided that they will invest in one. Go with it, go with that. Do not become the, block in between saying that it doesn't have all the features. You must go and improve that. And there are other times when you can use this opportunity to say all the contracts that need to be streamlined, which you're not really, they're not visible to you. At least they were not visible to me. There was just so many hundreds of procurement contracts. We were not getting engaged with this. It's humanly impossible for a team of 50, 60 lawyers to run a $10 billion business where the customers are the most important piece. And then there's a supply chain, and then there's other vendors, and then there's procurement of all kinds of things, whether it's related to office equipment or it's related to, computers. And so you want to still be able to create a process. And in that, I think the legal counsel's role in making sure that technology creates the processes for procurement so that procurement doesn't come back to you, but at the same time has the ability and processes set in place so that you can sleep at night well and say they're not randomly signing anything and everything.
That's right.
Many of them, when they sign those procurement, they're head of supply chain, or they're head of some travel agency that they're doing, or they're head of their ticketing stuff. They don't even come back with the contracts to you, and those contracts are lost. So the digitization process of just driving that behavior, I think, is also, and then when you go back to the board and you say, this is what you're doing to make sure all the risks are in one place being managed, it makes a huge difference to that board. Most board members want to have a management which is trying to use technology to manage risk.
Absolutely.
So, we have a couple of questions from the attendees as well, and I'll just try and club those and present this as like a single question. Firstly, it's covering the topic of digital signatures, and this Saishwari R, who's asking us that how do we decide on the validity of these tools? Is this validated by our IT Act more in the India context? And then there is a separate question which is kind of related to artificial intelligence being used and deployed. One in context of say an Arabic language. So if it's really to be artificial intelligence has to be applied to a different language, then how does this really work? And also something related to artificial intelligence, which we've kind of answered in some ways, that whether a clause like a force majeure, if it has to be pulled across various documents, can it be pulled? Whether it is, language agnostic again. So these are the few questions that we have unanswered. Anybody in the panel?
So maybe on digital signatures, I can take it, and Atulji can add to this. Clearly, the IT Act now enables and recognizes digital signatures. So if courts are now at the level where summons are accepted if served on WhatsApp, so we shouldn't really. In trial, of course, you will have to prove that the correct IP address or the signature of the person, and as you would do in a normal physical document production at the stage of trial by the rules of evidence under the Evidence Act, you will have to prove that this is indeed the document and this was the person who signed it, etc., etc. So the Evidence Act, now read together with the IT Act and the rules, enables the adoption of digital signatures. So I don't, and the government of India is doing it themselves. So your certificates of incorporation or other documents coming from government authorities themselves are digitally authenticated. So there is no issue with that.
I think there is a body called Controller of Certifying Authority. They authorize the signature bodies, which is like eMudra, NSDL, etc., etc. So these are the one which are used by the government agencies and a lot of corporates as well, which are accepted in today's world in the court of law. But I want to give you one more flavor, which you may or may not agree with me, but a lot of companies in India are using DocuSign and they're fine with it. And they are saying that they will not have any issues whenever it goes in the court of law, because they feel that as long as it is signed with using some, a court process, IP address, and certain, a secured environment, it should be okay. So I think digital signature is more of a necessity rather than option. And I think the certifying authority is one, but people are using Adobe Sign and DocuSign as well. Atul, you want to add something more to it?
I agree with Ganesh actually that yes, digital signatures are acceptable and can be produced in a court of law. Only thing where one has to be clear that it is not a signing. What is required is storage. Storage of such document has to be particularly tamper proof, and you should be able to produce it without, because one of the objection taken for the IT record is tampering. So if you can take care of that challenge, I think we have done almost 60-70%. So that is one thing. Secondly, in signing also, like you mentioned, Dinesh, about DocuSign and all, there is a linkage with the PAN or maybe Aadhaar also. So if that is done, then person cannot deny. For example, if I want to sign fake, I can sign, I am signing, but I can make different signature, which is not a regular signature. But if there is a DocuSign or digital sign, I will not be able to say I have not signed. Earlier, if I would have done on a physical paper, you would have to go to the handwriting expert to prove that Atul only has signed. But today, the digitalization, I'm telling you, digitalization have brought in so many advantages, which we are not even, which still we have to discover actually.
Yeah.
Those who have worked on the nitty-gritties particularly, they know that how many problems we anticipate. Sometimes customer sign which is a different signature, and then he say it is not my signature. In DocuSign, he cannot do that because there is these all companies have come up with the good, particularly two-way mechanism where OTPs are sent. Then you cannot, you don't have choice to accept the seal, whatever way you sign. Okay.
I think the specific question that IT Act does not by itself call out DocuSign or Adobe. I mean, that's important to recognize as well, that it recognizes digital signatures, but it hasn't in any way incorporated, software companies whose digital signature per se is valid. So that is exactly, I think, what Atul and Ganesh you're trying to say as well. That the process of establishing authenticity will still have to be done, but the fact that you've done a signature digitally does not by itself rule it out.
That's correct. That's correct. So on the second point, Sanket, you just talked about the AI in Arabic language. I think the answer is very simple. If we can do AI in English, it can be done in any language, whether it is Hindi, Arabic, French, German, Spanish, Russian, any language it is. So AI is more about training the models, building models, reading the existing data, makes a sense out of it, giving some logics, and then training it. So it can be done in any language.
Right. And nowadays, moreover, it is in dual languages. All contracts are in dual languages. For example, in Indonesia, we have Bahasa as the local language, and English will be as a dual language. So AI can be used in irrespective of the language across the platform. It can be used.
That's right. Let's take one last question. I know we are already crossing 4 o'clock, but this is an interesting one, and maybe a question for the next webinar, next topic for the next webinar itself. So there's Ruchi Singhvi who says that what's the suggested groundwork for migrating to a CLM solution? And there was another question which was also raised earlier by somebody from the attendees, that while CRM solutions on one side have evolved quite a bit, and CLM solutions now have a lot of catching up to do. So how do they kind of marry each other or kind of support each other in terms of any kind of integrations, etc., that can be done?
So I will take easy question first. That is whether CLM can match CRM. One has to understand that how companies will be able to sell if they don't match CRM. So very simple. All the new apps, all the new systems are coming, which are integrated to manage with all the versions which are there in the system. Actually, it can be 2018, 2019. It's just like as any computer system. So don't worry about that matching of CLM with CRM. And that is the first and foremost which is there for the CLM implementation. That you will first ask, because without that you will not entertain.
That's correct.
So that's an easy question. And how to have the groundwork on CLM, I think Ganesh will be able to tell you, but it can take more than 1 hour. But still I will request Ganesh to
have a webinar on this.
Yes, Ganesh.
So over to you, Ganesh.
No, as I said, I think one has to assess the pain points in your organization. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Then you have a budget in place. You have multiple vendors who participate in the process, so that you understand the broad landscape of tools and capabilities that they offer. Look at your own organization and to assess the modifications in the process, that the existing processes that have to be modified or changed to implement the CRM, the CLM tool, and then build the business case. So you have to explain to the management that if, for example, the cost of the tool is 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs, and there will be an annual recurring cost. So how do you justify that? You will get a dashboard, you will get a turnaround time. So if you look at tools like Volody, you can design a lot of bespoke reports in addition to the standard reports that the tool gives out. So really the tool has a lot to offer. It's to us how much you can extract out of the tool and get value out of it. And top of that, I think the real key to it is investing time in the implementation. If you take your eyes off the road when you are implementing the tool, you are really hurting yourself, shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak. So implementation is key, and having a full-time resource or a team concentrating on getting the implementation right is absolutely critical. Because somebody will be chasing you, asking you, we signed the check, when is the tool going live? And then if it goes live with a lot of bugs and glitches and the user experience is bad, it's gonna come back and bite you.
Right.
So I am just saying that major groundwork, major groundwork is to map a process and process owner, which are currently there in the system, to match up with the tool. Because these people will be implementing and implementation. Yes, Ganesh insisted on implementation. It's a really hard tough before we enjoy the fruits. It is just like a tree planting. We don't get fruits immediately. So yeah, so that's it actually, because time is less. As I said, Sanket, you can plan second webinar.
No, it's such a coincidence that Sanket is already working on a video. We are already working on a video already. It's almost done. So I think, Ruchi, thanks for raising this question. You will see that video coming up in the next couple of days.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to say that on a lighter note, pick up the phone to Sanket and say to him, I have a budget. I want to understand the pain points that you have been addressing in other customers. And that starts a dialogue where you will start to understand your pain points as well, if you haven't given it thought before. But I think it's important to say that if you have the budget and the mind all set, saying that you recognize there's something I need to do, you will find the solution providers' experience with others extremely useful as a starting discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Madhu. Thanks, Madhu, for that.
So,
from your side, Satish, as closing remarks.
Yeah, I think CLM and artificial intelligence is here to stay. We should, as everyone said, we should understand the pain point. We should have the budget, and you like it or you hate it. No, you are going to embrace it either today or tomorrow. So there is no way you can avoid it. So it is going to be there.
That's right.
Thank you so much, everyone. I think it was a great discussion. I think we had very, very enriching session today, and a lot of the participants must have got a lot of insight. So thanks so much. Thanks, Madhu. Thanks, Satulji. Thanks, Ganesh. Thanks, Satish. We will catch up some other time as well. But thank you so much for your time, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Sanket.
Bye.
Thank you.